Okay, we do the best we can. This is unfortunate, but if for some reason I disappear again, I'm going to try to make a duplicate video that's more seamless. So I'm running two videos at the same time, one on Zoom and one locally. If it goes down and I lose you, um, well, we have to stay connected in this other way. We can't be reliant on the technology all the time. So do me a favor and just try to use this as an opportunity to remember we're all connected in a deeper sense, not just in the way that we become reliant, but in a psychic way, the kind of way that maybe you relate to your spiritual master. Like Geshe Tenzin Zopai rarely text. I maybe once or twice a year, even if we're doing a preparation for a pilgrimage. That kind of communication has become less and less. The one that I'm growing more reliant on is the one that's from the heart, in which I can draw upon his wisdom or his advices without having to contact him using the ordinary channels. It's the kind of dialogue that happens between you and God, between you and your intuition, whatever word that you want to, between you and the universe. So at the top of the conversation, I was saying that the priestess, Jironing, has become so attuned that she lives in two worlds or many different worlds at the same time. She has a foot in this ordinary reality. She has to get on her scooter and drive to my house over an hour to come for the ceremony. She has to pick up her accoutrement, her flowers. She has to have a cup of tea to waken up. But at the same time, part of her consciousness is experiencing the dream world. Where she's engaging and interacting with spirits and deities, where she's receiving advices, where she has clairvoyant pictures, messages from the future. Of course, they're just like tea leaves, they need interpretation. Just like you and I, we go to bed at night, we dream, and we wake up startled, and we can take things at face value. Like I had a dream the other night that Emily and I were in a helicopter crash. Maybe it was predictive of this moment right here when we had the internet crash. we started our Zoom session 2 with a Black Hawk down. And what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Catastrophe. The internet in Bali goes down. What happens to our lives? The banking system collapses. I mean, I have a colleague here who's a specialist in internet security. Well, his life just went upside down and blew up because the infiltration, it's now a prime target to take down the grid because people recognize how absolutely inextricably reliant we are. So it's like if you ever wanted to find a weakness in your opponent, your enemy, you find it in the digital sphere now. So this is the inverse of what I'm talking about. Is we're now operating in worlds beyond the ones that just meet our eyes, for better and for worse. And so this is part of our endeavor to upgrade our consciousness and our nervous system and even our capacity to be not as reliant on the material and more receptive and more reliant on the immaterial. We also can't just hang on to the coattails of those few masters that have this capacity. Part of the archetype of the Aquarian age is that you and I, the ordinary ones, the ordinary becomes the extraordinary. The God of transcendence, the world of heaven beyond, in the Aquarian, is replaced by the notion that we are gods and Gaia, heaven is on earth. Now, if you look out, depending on the perspective that you take, it doesn't look like heaven. So you really have to don your quantum Ray-Bans and look through the eyes of emptiness in order to see the infinite horizon of possibility. And then you have to turn that reflection on yourself and see that where you feel inadequate and where you feel doubtful and where you feel incapable is also just a perspective. And that within you, you have also great capacities, superhuman capacities. They are mirrored in a few right now, but just imagine consciousness of living beings, millions of people on the planet evolving towards greatness and virtue, the ability to be sensitive, like the Geshe Tenzin Zopas and the Jiro Nings, and reclaiming enormous capacities that have been up until now dormant. This is also what is predicted in the Dwapara age, not in the beginning, the first 500 years of the Dwapara, but as we get into the middle of the Dwapara, as we head on our way to Satya Yuga, one of the classic characteristic defining, distinguishing notions is that human beings become exceptionally capable. This would be considered magical thinking, but sensitive, that we can have enormous telepathic capacities, paranormal capacities that become normal because we discover what our actual nervous system is capable of, incredibly long lives, because we understand how to tap the fundamental biology of longevity, for example. The challenge is that in the first 500 years, this kind of power isn't driven by a strong moral compass. So it's still driven by hedonic urges. It's still driven by the sense that this is self-aggrandizing. It's still put to the service of securing resources, fame, and fortune, what are called in the Buddhist tradition, the 8 worldly winds. It's still motivated by that compass setting. But as we turn ourselves over, as we depart the ordinary and discover the horizon of the extraordinary and remember our great capability, what should also happen in parallel is that we become resensitized to our dignity and our humanity. And then it becomes not a matter of an external codex, a 10 commandments, a niyama and yama that's imposed upon us. It becomes a natural output of being resensitized to our interrelationship with all living things. So of course, yes, all the religions, all the spiritual traditions have their foundational texts on ethics. At the outset, they seem like impositions, insistences. I should strive towards these things. I should avoid these things. I should adopt these things. But as this frequency changes within us, this becomes more of a natural, less a cerebral. In the same way that when your biology thirsts, it reaches for water. When your biology also recognizes its interdependence, then the suffering of others is experienced as your own, and immediately, as you would want to pull your hand from the flame, you would also want the other to be safe and to be free. So if the internet goes down, at least for the next 12 weeks, feel that you are in fellowship. You're not separate. You don't need to pop open a screen to feel connected. And actually what's happening here with maybe 100 people in this little pod, happening in multiple pods across the planet, people beginning to wake up, people beginning to find their alignment, people beginning to find their ethical true north, people beginning to become resensitized, people beginning to remember their innate capacities, cultivate their capacities, share their capacities, sculpt. In a way, it's sculpting the new mandala. That's what's happening. The departure is about how do you let go of one mandala? How do you dissolve one mandala? How do you tap the right frequency? And then how do you regenerate a new mandala? That's as simple as it gets. That is what the Crucible is. That is what Return with the Elixir, my book, is about. That is what every spiritual practice is about. And that is where we are cosmically as a civilization. So it's worth mentioning this alchemical principle called salve et coagula. It comes from the Hermeticum, the Hermetic texts, which in a way you can't find their origins, although they may historically, maybe you find it in Egyptian and Greek literature, civilization. But if you ask anybody worth their salt, they're going to say, just like the Buddhists do, that it comes from another dimension. Just like the great mystical traditions all have a parallel origin story, one that's based in real-time history and one that has this other kind of origin story that always keeps the mind open to the possibility of alter dimensions and other agencies. It flows from Greece into Western Europe, is preserved in the alchemical traditions. Got a few more people trying to get in. Please come on time. It helps me so I don't get my attention divided. um, Salve et coagula. Salve means to dissolve. Et coagula means to come together. To dissolve and come together. If you take a basic asana sequence, a posture of Surya Namaskar, or a prostration like the great Tibetan circumambulating and circumnavigating the Kailash, the great mountain Kailash in central Tibet. You start as an ordinary being in your prostration in the ordinary world, and as you head downwards, think about this. This is incredibly important. The dissolution is a downward motion. There is no new age ascension first. There's first death. There's first dissolve. There's first come undone. There's first cross the threshold into madness. There's first take the risk. First, there's pain. There's confusion. There's the coming undone. This is absolutely critical. The willingness to come undone on your pilgrimage is your ticket in to the process of transformation. And anyone who provides you a pathway without that is selling you short. You actually want to come done. You want to disappear. You want to dissolve. You want to go off terrain. You want to become unknown to yourself. I was saying last week that this is utterly disorienting, terrifying. And then I ask people, have you been through it? The dark night of the soul. People raise their hand, especially in the last 3-4 years. Because the archetype of our collective is also a mirror of the individual at this juncture. Whether it's already happening, whether it started a few years before the conjunction in January 12, 2020, maybe it started a year before for you, maybe 2 years for you. Maybe it'll start a year from now for you, depending on your own birth chart. But it's coming. And it spells the beginning of the mythopoetics of departure, is your willingness to die, your willingness to dissolve, your willingness to go into the unknown, your willingness to go off terrain, your willingness to go where you have never gone before, where it's not safe, where it's not predictable, where all your resources render themselves at least temporarily utterly useless. As I was mentioning, 25 years plus of Tibetan Buddhist training, and in the depth of my despair, I almost gave up on all of them because none of them were quote unquote working. Actually, they were working just fine. I was resisting. I didn't want to die. I wanted to know who I was. I wanted to know where I was going. God damn it. So that prostration heads south first to the south node into Hades, where your belly is on the ground, not your feet. Your crown, your third eye is on the ground. You're blinded. For a second, you're blinded. Just like I was 10 minutes ago, co-piloting a ship with the electricity going out, the internet going out. You cannot see. It's darkness retreat. It's being in the womb. We have to spend time in the womb. We volunteer for darkness retreat to grow our capacity to live in the unknown and to resist the temptation of finding the light switch. Where's the goddamn light switch? I can't breathe in here. I was just telling my friend Carson here, who's a longtime Bali person. He looked at me in the eyes and he said, "How are you doing?" And I gave him an honest answer. I said, "Bali is a bit tricky." I don't know what he said. He didn't exactly say it's a crucible, but he said, yeah, it's like stirring the pot here. So even as I'm telling you this, I'm also living this, which is every ounce of my genetic inheritance is looking for ground. And Bali happens to be one of the major portals where there's definitely no ground. We've volunteered to be in a place that has no ground. And it's stretching us. And the stretch is not comfortable. Just like if you go to the gym and you're really working your edge, you tear a little. So in that prostration, you're heading to the south node, you're heading into Hades, you're leaving the ordinary world, you're leaving the ordinary identity, you're leaving the creature comforts, you're leaving the familiar. You go dark, you go blind, you don't know who you are, you don't know where you are, you have nothing to draw on, your feet are not planted on the ground, your third eye is blind. Now you're in the bardo. So as I go through this material, we are gonna, it's like learning multiple languages. I'm going to flip-flop between the Tibetan map, the mythological map, Joseph Campbell, and Jung's map. And as we go through 12 weeks together, it'll be so intertwined hopefully it will become like a seamless language, because in a way, they're all saying the same thing. This is why I chose Solve a Coagula as the central framework for Return with the Elixir, and upon it, used it as a framework to map these three models. From the mythological point of view, we're talking about a departure from the ordinary world. From the Jungian point of view, we're talking about a departure from ego, from identity, from rigidity, from certainty. From the Tibetan model, we're talking about the dissolution that begins the process, the letting go of this body, of this life, of this identity, of this mandala, and then entering into the between, the bardo. It's in the bardo where we train to tap our higher intuition. So when I ask you to pray, and some of you don't like that word, find another word. I don't know many of you, or a lot of you are new to me, but I have a sneaky suspicion if you found this opportunity and it spoke to you, the probability is already very high that you have your own channel or uplink to the celestial realms, to the deities, to the spirit guides, to God, to your own intuition, whatever word is most comfortable for you. You are already learning to communicate, to trust, and to rely on something unseen and deep within you. By the time we get to the tantras, we're going to call in those agencies. We're going to see green Tara. We're going to become green Tara. We're going to call in the medicine Buddha. We're going to call in the medicine spirit guides. But for now, we're just learning the art of letting go, which is not an easy one. It's a good omen that we started with this mishap. If I can be completely transparent, if it weren't for somebody else's nervous system, Matthew coming here, what might my nervous system do when I have the responsibility to people live here in Bali and to all of you wherever you are in the world, and the fucking internet goes down? What happens to my nervous system? Oh, you think Dr. Miles Neale has it all together, don't you? Don't be deceived. I have a lot of childhood hangups about performance, about my duty and responsibility to you, about what might happen if I don't deliver. And what happens when it's completely you? I could wake up at 6 a.m. I could cross every T and dot every I. And then Indonesia comes in and Bali sweeps in and says, well, today, brother, there's no fucking internet for you. So this is where you go dark. This is where your over-reliance and predictability, all your tools. This is the limitation of all your tools. And when the fear is creeping in, so you're about to wee your pants, can you let go, and can you invite in your Dharma brothers and sisters? Can you let go of the way that we have been conditioned by postmodern industrial society to be so individual, to be so capable? I was trying to say in the first session that where there is the demon, there is also the treasure. They're in the same, they are of the same nature. That moment of fear and paralysis in which you have become over-reliant on your own capacity as an isolated individual, alienated from the rest, using will alone, that place where the infrastructure breaks down, as it will do in the banking system, as it will do in societal, civil systems are already breaking down. Those that we have grown accustomed to relying on will break down. Look at governments and leadership around the world. There are no good choices. Few choices, let's put it that way. Few good choices that aren't corroded and corrupt, in possession of an alternative agenda that privileges and protects the few. There's a demon, there's a dragon right there. There's your personal dragon, and there is our collective dragon. And the dragon also guards a treasure. And the question is how do you alchemize the moment? How do you not get utterly terrified by the prospect of the dragon? So let's name a few dragons. Anybody? What are the collective dragons in the collective field right now that are staring down at us with breathing fire? Anybody here? Anybody there?
Climate change.
Climate change. Another one.
Helplessness.
Helplessness.
Political unrest.
Political unrest.
Species extinction.
I couldn't hear that one.
Species extinction.
Extinction, mass extinction. Anybody here in Bali so that I know you're awake? Fear mongering.
Genocide.
Genocide, war. Okay, good. So these are our collective dragons. And depending on where we're coming from, I suspect we can all admit it's not a stretch of the imagination to come face to face with such a dragon and to feel helpless. The enormity. And the question is in that moment, how do we connect with the infinite horizon of possibility so that we can tap a different energy, so that we can actually be constructive? I think that's a great question. I think that's a worthwhile question. I think that is a noble question. I think that is a noble pursuit. I think you're on this call right now because you're extremely privileged. I think you're on this call right now because karmically you have amassed a lot of virtue. You are on the vanguard. You have a strong possibility to contribute something good to the collective. I know already so many of you. I know that you've taken your heroic first steps already. You're already in a different place. You're already in a different place. You're already putting yourself in a position to be of service. You're already in the laboratory of learning how to at once see reality one way in which it terrifies you, in which it is constricted, like the birth canal, seemingly impossible. And then to find an alternative channel in which to see it as a possibility, in which to make an inroad, in which to tap the right frequency. All of this to say is that there are some intangibles that will help us, will help you individually, and will help us collectively. They're all packed in, they're all baked into the initial phase of the journey and the departure phase. They're characterized by things like letting go. Number one, surrender is the training in surrender. I mean, if I can say, sorry to use my experience and refer to my experience, I hope it's relevant to you. I hope you can find a way to make it relevant to you. But in my initiation into Bali, one of the things that I've had to learn, many of us have had to learn, is reality has its own flow. And I don't know, we got so used to being so competent that we could actually manufacture our destiny, that we convinced ourselves that we could do it. We can do anything in that way. You climb the ladder, you earn your money, you seek your house, and you buy your house. It's pretty straightforward, dummy. And you come to Bali, and Bali laughs at you. The gods are laughing. The gods are laughing because it doesn't work in the assembly line. It doesn't matter how many fancy letters you have behind your name. It doesn't matter how many zeros you have in your bank account. It doesn't matter how willful you are. Bali is going to show you. It's going to show you one way or another how to surrender. And either you take it to the very 9th or 10th inning. Is there 10 innings? Don't use baseball analogies if you don't know how many innings there are.
Well, Miles, you know, if you tied, you go into a 10th inning. So why don't you
Okay.
think about that? Okay.
So there's always
Generally
a
9.
chance for more.
Yeah.
There's always a chance for more to push it. Okay, you could
That's
push
right.
your
That's the way to
willfulness.
look.
You could push your willfulness, as I did, and push it and push it and push it, and then eventually Bali breaks you, and it leaves you in tears. The mountain, Agung, Batukaru. The mountain calls you to summit on pilgrimage. So Matthew here has done every peak there is. Karsten, how are you doing with you've done them all? How many of you have done all the peaks here? A couple of you. You're being called to go up to the summit, as you'll read in Return with the Elixir, where I disclose what my experience was like. You can have all the accoutrement, you can run 5 miles a day, you can do your push-ups. Even my buddy Chokade had his headlamp and his hiking boots and his mosquito repellent trousers. He had it all. I had sneakers and a water bottle. I came so ill prepared. The mountain will show you that you're not in control. And it will have you on your knees, or worse, in fetal position. And why? Solviate coagula. The willful person that climbs and tries to attempt the summit of the sacred mountain is also doing a prostration. They seek to ascend before they're willing to descend. And the mountain makes you descend. It puts you on your knees. It debases you. It makes you question everything, your reality, your competence, your identity. And when the tectonic plates move and shift like that, there's also a revelation. When you're crying in the corner, there is a revelation. Something is unearthed. just as it's happening right now in the collective field, there's a great apocalypse means revelation in Greek. It means to unveil. It means to see with the third eye clearly what has always been there but has been concealed. So we are having a great revelation that actually we have entrusted too many people that are not morally adept to hold the position of power. We are starting to see how the game is rigged. That depending on the color of your skin, you may not have a chance in the Monopoly game. We're seeing that. Just as things are coming undone, you may see, as I saw on Mount Agung, Abang, actually, Mount Abang. This is what Jung called the confrontation with the unconscious, the ills of your own unskillfulness, the consequences of your own greed, the consequences of your own aggression, the consequences of your own bias, the consequences of your own hubris. Now, I'm about, I don't know, I'm like an hour into this. This is not pretty, is it? Maybe some of you didn't sign up for this. This is hard. This is scary. This is a confrontation with the shadow, the sides of you that are ugly. This is a confrontation with the collective shadow, the parts of our collective psyche that are unsavory. Maybe a couple of you don't come back next week. This is not me making it hard. This is the hero's journey. This is the real hero's journey, requires this. It's like that meat mallet, you know, that little meat mallet that you pound out the meat. It softens it, the tissue. And it's actually a good thing. It doesn't feel like a good thing, but it's a necessary thing. Because what it's doing is it's creating space. It's creating space for something new. It's creating openings. Yes, so that you can deal with things that you haven't dealt with, but also therein lies where there's a dragon, there's a treasure. Just when you think you have it all figured out and the soles of your feet are flat on the ground, you have also occupied a bit of real estate in your identity that excludes possibilities of your growth. So this descent into hell and this dissolving is necessary for an opening and a reclaiming. And what you reclaim will be your gift for the mandala that we will build together. So it's not just for you. And that's the beginning of a new energy. That's a beginning of a new compass reading. That's the beginning of a new orientation, that it's not just about you. If you look at the wellness industry, which is replete with biohacks and quick fixes, they are largely self-aggrandizing. Longer health, more beautiful body, better six-pack, more voluptuous shape, more likes, more wins. The new energy is about us. And not only us in the temporal us, but the future, our legacy. And I've been saying this for a couple of years now, and I use this analogy of the builders of the great cathedrals, the masons, the stone masons that block by block might work on a cathedral, or before it, the pyramids, who might not live to see the day where their construction was finished. And yet, because they were aligned with some greater purpose, just like as the Bhagavad Gita says, the reward was in the process, not in the fruition. And that is as early as a civilization on the cusp of the Piscean Aquarian transition. Part of our mandate is to find the right energy so we can contribute a better initial impulse to the civilization that's coming, that we might not in this form be around to witness. And I think that is what the word like selflessness really means. Selfless heroism. Joseph Campbell described and defined the hero as someone who is willing to save others, to go beyond the self, more concerned with others, would be willing to make that sacrifice for others. That's the person that runs into the burning building. That's you. So the intangibles of this initial phase of departure, one of them is surrender. Even your own musculature, just like if, I don't know about you, but I've said this over the years when I'm in a, when I'm on a flight and there's a lot of turbulence, somehow I feel comforted by tightening my seatbelt and then grabbing the armrest. And it occurred to me much later that if the plane is going down, what good is it gonna do? Racing for impact, I don't know. That bracing is part of like an evolution. It's an evolutionary adaptation, that bracing, that. And what the Tibetans are encouraging us to do is actually the inverse. It's to override the evolutionary instinct for bracing and loosen instead. So we didn't get a chance to do it in the opening meditation, but you can try for the next week, whatever meditation that you're using, mindfulness or visualization or breath work or prayer or whatever you're doing. I trust you and I trust your own diamond queen. But really for the departure phase, focus on that sensory experience of release, of letting go, of surrender, of letting the bath water of reality catch and support you, not your will. And so why I use that analogy of Matthew coming to help me when the video went down is for some of us, especially those of us that have had some trauma, that's an extra added disadvantage or weight that we have to convert into an ally. And one of the ways that necessarily has to happen is we have to learn how to do a trust fall with others. Because the trauma is relational, the damage is relational, the trust has been broken. There are many of you that grew up in environments in which there wasn't the reliability, and that the best that your nervous system could do was to become constricted or even worse, dissociated, to disconnect. And that's a survival mechanism. and it did its job. Now, one of the requirements of the hero's journey is that you learn to relinquish. Well, that's going to be in direct opposition to the coding of the survival instinct. Do you follow? But where there's a dragon, there's an ally. So the people that come to me for therapy, who inevitably we discover in the bowels of the belly of the whale, in the long corridors of the labyrinth, is their survival adaptation as a result of breaches in trust, chaos, disequilibrium at a time where their brain formation and attachment formation was pivotal. And so I say straight away, because usually these people would like a breathwork technique, or they would like a meditation practice. And you're not going to get there. In fact, it could actually turn against you, and you could spend 20 years, as some people do, on a long spiritual quest for a meditation practice that transcends trauma. When Matthew came in here, because of his competence and because of his nice energy, I could fall into his arms, which is beautiful. Thank you, Matthew. And that's what we need with fellowship. Your spouse becomes your guru, your partner, your colleague, your Dharma brother, your Dharma sister. If you're trying to recover, if you're interested in recovery, if you're interested in healing, they become your personal crucible for rehabilitation. The idea that we would avoid relationships in order to keep ourselves safe has left us alienated. The idea is not to avoid relationships. The idea is to become discerning and find and seek better ones. That is the opportunity cost of putting yourself consciously and volitionally back in harm's way so that you can transform the wounding into your brilliance. The reason I'm bringing this up is that needs to happen on an individual basis during this departure. You're going to get uncomfortable. Some of you have trauma. You have to do that really, really skillfully. You don't just want to jump straight into the fire. You want to be systematic and deliberate. Not that you're controlling the outcome, but that you're cognizant of the outcome, because inevitably you will get to that place where you're vulnerable. And your normal routine or ways of coping, your inevitable coping strategies, you want to relinquish them and open to new ones. Just like some people in here are working on different sustainability projects. We have people here that are working on new collective community. You have to bring people into the vulnerability of why they do things the way they do, and then create that space where they're invited into letting go so that they can experience something new. So I bring this up because safety, a sense of safety, is a prerequisite. You don't do the trauma work in the first session. You develop rapport for 6 sessions or 8 sessions, or as long as it takes until you feel there's some confidence that the bond has been formed, so that you can then begin the solving, the dissolution, what Freud and Jung called the regression, in the service of the ego. That means you go back in the time machine to childhood where the wounding was. But you don't do that right away. You get your provisions in order before you set out for Abang. The safety is in fellowship, Buddha Dharma Sangha. The Buddha Dharma Sangha is the ultimate refuge. We can call that as the ultimate safety. Those of you that are following the Lam Rim, the Gradual Path. In the Tibetan way of understanding this, the Buddha is your own awakened capacity, the Buddha nature. The methodologies provide safety, they provide confidence because they've been replicated to success over and over and over again through the centuries. And your fellowship is the reliance, because in any moment the internet system can go down, quote unquote, the metaphorical internet system can go down. And upon whom do you rely? Rely on those people that are oriented in the same way that you are and that have cultivated virtue and sensitivity and ethics. Don't rely on the wrong people, in other words. And then people give me a bad rap about this. Like, yes, I'm saying you have to be discerning in this age. It doesn't mean that you can't have compassion, but don't be an idiot. There are some people that won't have your best interest. There are some people that are not reliable. There are some people that will actively engage in malice. Jung is very clear about this, that we wake up and grow up and understand this as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible. You're only beginning to see the tip of the iceberg at how rife pedophilia is across our planet. There are predators. Your job is to find the right people and vet them. Take time to vet them. Because when you fall, you will rely on them to support you. So I'm saying that the departure has some of these intangibles. One of them is the ability to surrender. How do you know when to surrender? Think about the airline moment where you're clutching and gripping and looking to control. How many of you know what I'm talking about in your own life, that moment? Bracing for impact. Try to reassociate bracing impact with surrender, let go. I'm not by any stretch of imagination saying I can do this easily. Not saying that at all. Don't qualify yourself by the result. Just understand the principle and put it into practice best you can. The other one is finding safety, and I started the hour by talking about Jiro Ning, her ability to tap something, some frequency. If you don't have direct access to that, then what I'm saying is find it with community, find it with other people so that you can learn to what's called use them as a mirror. Right? This idea of that you should find love within yourself, or you should find safety within yourself is a half truth. It's possible to find love and safety in yourself if you had good mirroring, because we're not isolated atomic individuals. We're matrix beings, we're system beings. So if there was enough love when you were growing up, even if there were a lot of mishaps, there was enough love, enough consistency, you have a reservoir that you can draw on. And if not, for whatever reason, at some point you can stop pointing fingers and blaming and just get on with your life. Find better people that can mirror for you that you're lovable, acceptable, capable, and that they will be your neural support. And if you don't have them immediately, you can't reach out immediately, then have this kind of psychic sense that you're in a pod, that your teachers are there, that the Buddhism, Bodhisattvas and spirit guides are there. Open the antenna. I think it's really important. Maybe 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been talking like this, but now I'm definitely talking about this. There are other dimensions, there are other beings, there are other agencies. The more I open to this, the more I see it in both ways. It's very clear in Bali because every Balinese sets out offerings, and they're making offerings because they know if they don't, there are agencies that will be mischief or chaos causing. Trihitakarana is a philosophy of forming good relations with other people, with the land itself, but also with the spirits. Forming those good relations so that you can rely on them. I mean, if you give and if you live in reciprocity with the land, it shows you abundance. If you live in virtue and reciprocity with your fellowship, they will be there. And if you live in reciprocity and generosity with the spirit dimension, guess what's going to happen? I wanted to talk about mythology. I wanted to invite you into the mythology because we're in the month of mythology. How many of you found your myth? How many of you did your fucking homework? Do your homework. In fact, I don't think we're using the chat enough. How many of you take good notes, or note takers? Raise your hand. You like good notes? Do me a favor. Don't keep those to yourself. Use the comment section for each of the sessions, like session 1 comments, session 2 comments, session 3 comments. Go and crystallize the notes that you have into bullet points. Crystallize it. Don't vomit your notes for everybody. I'm telling you this because in Buddhism, there is learning occurs in 3 phases. The first is what's called the learning or the wisdom derived by way of hearing. It comes from listening to the lecture or listening to your master. In these days, it can come from reading. So it's at a cursory intellectual level. But that's not enough, right? That's only for the left brain. Then the next one is the learning that is born, or the wisdom that is born of reflection, critical reflection, refining your understanding, which means you go through your notes and you cross-check it, or you have a dialogue, and in the Tibetan monasteries, you have a debate. What this does is it refines your intellect. It filters out your intellect, let's say. It sharpens your blade of critical reason. And it puts you on the back foot, and it makes you stumble a little bit, and it shakes things up a little bit, and it's purposeful in that way, so that you don't just get stuck at the intellect, and you don't just hold on to words, and you don't just hold on to ideas, but now you have to be participants with the knowledge. So somebody who takes good notes, distill it, and in that process of distillation, you're going through the lecture one more time, and you're making it more personal along the way. Then post it, and people can look, and people can cross-check, and people can comment, and you have a forum there. Let's see as an experiment if that forum is at least partially useful for this kind of exchange. In the Contemplative Studies program several years ago, we had breakout groups. I'm not gonna be able to do that for you with facilitators. We had, and I think they were really deeply impactful and meaningful. We're not gonna have that this time. Let's see if we can use that space for that. Find your myth. By the end of the week, you have to have a myth, even if it's not a myth. I mean, it doesn't have to be a myth that you're familiar with, and it can be any myth. In fact, the one that you stumble on and surrender to at the last minute because you find it in your child's bookcase. It's like, Miles told me to get a myth. I'm running out of time. Just grab something. Okay. What's the synchronicity there? Okay. Where's the synchronicity, by the way? Is it in the book? Where's the potency? Is the potency in the myth that you find on the 30th page in the dusty book from the stacks in the New York Library? Where's the potency come from? Think about it. It can be any myth. The myth is empty. The myth is a reflection of your own virtue. What you derive in it is, we have to externalize it in order to internalize it. The third round of wisdom or integration of knowledge is based on, it tends to get translated as meditation. I don't think it's the right word. Embodiment would be a better word. Integration might be a better word. The wisdom that comes by way of experience might be a better word. Put it into practice, apply it. You can't apply something that you haven't already refined and learned. So find your myth by the end of the week, and then start distilling the notes, put the notes up. Let's see if those encourage some deeper investigation at all. We're in the mythology section. We're already session number 2. Find your own mythology. Practice a little bit this idea of surrender in whatever meditative, contemplative practice that you're, I mean, even ice bath. Some of you are doing ice bath. Some of you are doing breath work. Try to have some practice time around the biofeedback of surrender, letting go, when there's that gripping. You all have the principle. Now try to build it into your daily practice. I wanted to share a mythology, a living mythology. Some of you have already heard this living mythology because you've been a direct participant in either the talks I gave at Green School, Hope in the Dark Night, or you were on the pilgrimage, or you're reading the book. If any of those 3 things, if you intersected with me on any of those 3 things, this mythology is now your mythology, or could be one of your mythologies. Part of what our experiment is, this is a series of, the Crucible is a series of experiments. What you put in, you get out. We're experimenting with mythology. You find a mythology, you read the mythology, you start to embrace the mythology, and then you start to live the mythology. And what do I mean by that? We are trying to bring online the right brain of intuition. We're trying to not dethrone the patriarchy of reason. We want to bring king and queen together. We don't want to castrate the king, because that's a damn shame. We want to bring king and queen together so that they can rule as sovereign agents in your mandala. And the queen has tended to be, in the last 400 or 500 years, she's been displaced. Let's bring the queen back. We need her. Living mythology is an opportunity for you to live more with your right brain, to live in the world more with your right brain, in the way that maybe Jiro Ning, Geshe Tenzin Zopa, some of these more integrated beings live this way. It's not that they abandon reason, and it's not that they can't get their, can't use the GPS to get from their motorcycle, from their house on motorcycle downtown. They can. But they're also they're open to synchronicity, they're open to dream, they're open to celestial input, they're open to the universe. As Lim Bell said, they're open to the immediacy of what the universe is presenting in any given moment. Wow. Wow. The universe is speaking to us. It's maybe speaking a foreign language, but it's speaking and communicating nonetheless. Your soul, through your body and through your dreams and through your intuitions and through your synchronicities, is speaking to you. You may not know the language. You may not be familiar with it. You may not decipher it right away. You may have to stumble. You may have to get it wrong. At the end of last cast, someone asked us, we remember that someone last, like, how do you know? How do you know if you follow your intuition, you're following the right intuition? It presupposes, that very question presupposes that you're trying to live in accuracy all the time, in certainty. Sometimes you don't know, and sometimes you get it wrong. But wrong is like hitting chapter 13 of a 26 chapter book. Is it over? Is the wrong over? Is your life over? Did you marry the wrong person? It's wrong. It's over in chapter 13. Depending on how you handle the divorce, chapter 26 could be your best chapter yet. Depending on how you handle your trauma healing, if you were abused as a child, chapter 26 can be the best chapter you've ever written. How are you going to get there? You have to challenge the mythology you're already living by. You just don't know it, which is the mythology that's been bequeathed to you by probably not so competent parents, and definitely a society that is absolutely imbalanced and insane. So I'm asking you to dig up the mythology for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is to identify the classic hero steps, so that you can use it as a meta map, so that you can identify where you are in your own life on the meta map. When your hero or heroine is in the Shire, you know what that's like. You know what it's like to have the bubble burst. You know what it's like to refuse the call. You know what it's like to answer the call. You know what it's like to make that crossing over the threshold. You read it in someone else's life, you identify it in yours, it gives you strength and confidence. And some of the myths, my goodness, Odysseus was at sea for 10 bloody years. Don't think that you can escape in this class in 12 sessions and make it through to the other side. The mythology that I want to just introduce you to is a mythology that began for me several years ago with my friends. A lot of them are on the line here when we did the Return with the Elixir class. And then the great conjunction of the planetary alignments happened. Then the pandemic happened. And then I had a series of visions. These are all disclosed in the book, Return with the Elixir, which I hope you're reading, but I ask you again not to share, not to comment, not to like, not to give it any, keep it secret, secret society, top secret. Don't even tell your partner about it. Unless your partner's in this class. I don't want to make it about me, but there is one little piece about this, which is about me opening myself to visionary experience, which both Jung and many others have said should not be so, there shouldn't be so much skepticism around it. It's an innate part of our biology. It's an innate part of the right brain intuitive process that you may have, just like you may have dreams, just like you may have a weird feeling about a synchronicity, like the book that you choose, the person that you meet, the time that you meet it, the little symbolic thing that you see on the street that you had thought about 6 hours earlier. Don't dismiss these things. Follow them. They're the rabbit down the rabbit hole. When I moved to Bali, I met Chakade, the Prince of Ubud. We started having a lot of conversations. It occurred to me that I wanted to bring pilgrims to Bali, and not only Bali, but to Java, where the great Borobudur mandala is, largest mandala on the planet. Largest mandala on the planet. Of course, we're going to go there. Greatest symbol. The mandala is, of course, the symbol of integration. Jung loved it. The Tibetans use it. It's for the Tibetans, it is the three-dimensional palace of a deity, not an external deity, but you. The alchemy of transforming your ordinariness into a deity happens in the crucible of a mandala. Incredible. You become enlightened in your own mandala. So they built a nine-story, massive structure between two volcanoes and two rivers in Java. And they put thousands of reliefs, 2,150 something reliefs around it. All these reliefs tell the story of the Buddha's awakening. They give teachings in pictorial form, because pictures carry 1,000 words about how to get enlightened. about how to practice virtue. At the very base are all the disturbing Dante Inferno images of karmic retribution to awaken you to the fact of infinite consequentiality of your actions and intentions. That's the entryway. That's the wall of fire you must cross, the firewall in. Remember that everything that you think, say, and do breeds consequences, and align yourself with virtue is your ticket in. You want to sit at the knights as a knight of the round table? Your entry ticket is virtue. Then you proceed through the walkways and the different dimensions of reality to the summit of enlightenment. You enact enlightenment in this mandala. And I had a vision of not only Geshe Tenzin Zopa up there doing his bodhisattva vow ceremony for the pilgrims, but he was not there alone. He was there with a local master, a local tantric master. Some of you know this story, so I apologize, but every time I reiterate it, what I'm doing is familiarizing myself with the mythology that is available, has presented itself, so that I become even more convinced of it. Because it could be easily dismissed as hogwash and the silly play of a narcissist. How do you know? You don't know. You don't know. You have to keep moving forward with it. You have to keep listening to it. You have to keep interacting with it. It's not, chapter 13 is not the end of the book. You have to keep going with it. Patrick Van den Broek, a Belgian anthropologist who I met, who's not on the internet, has no website. By synchronicity, I found Patrick Van den Broek. I said, Patrick, he's an expert on the Borobudur. I was going to invite him in to teach our group about the Borobudur. I told him about the vision that I had of Geshe Tenzin Zopa on top of the Borobudur with another tantric master, and he told me this. He said, I've had the same vision, but I never had access to the Vajrayana Buddhist side of the master, but I myself have a master. I know the master that is in your vision. We can put the two of them together. I said, great. Not only did I say great, but every hair on my bloody neck was standing up. What do you mean you've had the same vision? What do you mean 10 years before you were in the very same monastery I was where I first met Geshe Tenzin Zopa? You were there, although I didn't meet you. You were there among 250 other students. You could have been my roommate. We eventually get these two masters together. The Monkujito is the tantric master of the Shaivite tradition, local master in Java. He invites us to holy Mount Lawu, to his ashram. We go there for the two masters to get acquainted. They don't speak a common language. And by the way, Geshe Tenzin Zopa hasn't asked me a single question about what's going on. I buy his ticket, he gets on the plane, he comes. He has no idea. He has no idea. Talk about someone who's not gripping with reality, embracing with reality, and wants certainty and wants predictability and wants to know where his foot will fall next moment. I send him a ticket. Before he knows it, he's in Mount Lawu with another guy with a white turban. Purpose of our visit is to combine energies for a joint ceremony which will occur in 5 days at the summit of the Borobudur. Okay, great. Let me take you around. Monkujito starts taking us around the sacred mountain, and what happens is that they start doing ceremonies together. They come from different religions, by the way. Normally, people are rigid about their religion, dogmatic about their religion. These two cats are very dissimilar personalities, represent different tantric traditions, are masters in their own right, but boom, instant synergy and affection, lots of affection, guys. I'm trying to tell this story because I want you to get the quality. Feel into the quality. Don't worry about the details. There's lots of affection. There's lots of mutual respect. They slip into ceremony, each one of them with their Tibetan bells, each one of them with their distinctive mantras. The mantras begin to merge during ceremony, Tibetan, Sanskrit, one from the Shaivite Tantra tradition, one from the Tibetan Vajrayana tradition. Both share a common source somewhere in the Swat Valley. Both share a single common tantric source. Over the next few days, what happens, it becomes clear that not only did Patrick Vandenbroek and I have visions of putting our master on top of the ceremony, but each one of these masters in their own way had visions that led them to this moment. The synchronicity of multiple parties and multiple consciousness following signs, lending themselves and turning themselves over to the echo of something deeper in the collective psyche that's drawing out of us a symbol. Monko had a dream before we arrived that the Dalai Lama had visited his ashram with 4 other members, 5 in total. He didn't know who was coming. He didn't know who showed up. We showed up with Geshe Tenzin's Open, 4 other people. We arrived on a dark moon when the moon is darkest. And that was an incredible story. It's a sub-story, but the idea there is that we arrived on a dark moon. And Monko said that there would be a moment of crisis and a moment of doubt, a moment of instability and immobility. And there where the dragon lies is also the treasure. And what happened the next morning is Geshe Tenzin Zopa, who the backstory for him is that he was in charge by the great Lama Zopa Rinpoche, his teacher, who made it up to Sum Valley in the Himalayas on his last visit before his death, which is Geshe Tenzin Zopa's birthplace, and which is where the home of the Ratchin Nunnery that our community support. And 24 hours before he died, Lama Zopa had a vision that on the premise of the nunnery should be erected a 70-story replica of the Bodhanath Stupa. And it should face east towards Tibet. And it should last 1,000 years. And he gave that project to Geshe Tenzin Zopa, put it on his shoulders. And within 24 hours, he was evacuated from Sum by helicopter and he passed away. It was his dying wish and his dying vision. Well, there in Mount Lawu on the dark night, Geshe Tenzin Zopa has a human moment, just like you and me. A moment when it goes dark, a moment when the internet goes down and you can't see, a moment when you're in prostration and your third eye is covered. And he's overcome with doubt. This is my teacher. This is your teacher. He's still human. He has a moment of doubt. The project is too big. I have to cancel it. I have to amend it. It can't be 70 stories. It has to be, maybe 6 foot high. It's a little stupa. Why don't we go for a little stupa? Do you see that? I want you to relate to that. That's the moment. That's the moment where you say, I can't launch a podcast. I can't break out of this family system. I can't get out of my abusive relationship. I can't break this habit. I can't break this mindset. I can't leave my home. I can't depart. It's too daunting. It's too big. I'll go for something that's more reasonable. I'll go for something that I can handle. I'll go for something that's predictable. He comes out of his room and Ryan and Matthew and me and Emily are sitting in this little ashram and you can see Geshe Tenzin Zopa's eyes. He's overcome. I've never seen him like that. I wouldn't go as far as shaking in his boots, but you get my point. And what did he do? He shared with us his doubt and we sat with him. And we processed his fear with him. And we all knew the stupa would be built. It's about sharing the nervous system. And in that moment, he was vulnerable enough to share our hope and to feel connected with us. And here's the kicker for all of us. I'm speaking directly to your soul to remember when the great project is before us, we are not alone. We cannot build the new mandala alone. And I'm sure because of his acumen, wisdom, prowess. He felt like he had to do it on his own, and in that moment of dark night, it broke that. It broke that spell and opened into a collective effort. And within 15, 20 minutes, Matthew, would you agree? You know, like we had a snack, we ate some chapatis. Geshe Sopa was back in full force. He's on his phone. He's on 2 phones. He's calling them, cancel that last message. Cancel that last text message. Hoping that overnight, like no one had started the process of undoing, you know, rectifying the situation. Cancel the order. We'll do it. We'll do it. We're going to do it. We'll fulfill the prophecy. We'll fulfill the vision. Because that's his personal moment in the dark night. You relate to it as you wish. We're still not into the collective on the Borobudur monument. So then a few nights later, which is our last night in Mount Lawu, you know, the revived Geshe Zopa sitting in a dark room with Munkujito, and they're planning the ceremony. Now we're there. These 2 guys are going to join their traditions. They're going to do a ceremony. They're going to unite Shaiva and Buddha. They're going to unite Shaiva and Buddha. These are 2 archetypes. Shaiva, liberation, Buddha, love. Shaiva about transcendence, Buddha about embodiment. They're going to reunite these twin traditions that have been split for many, many years, maybe 5 centuries. At one time in the Borobudur, at the 9th century, in the Salinga dynasty, Salingar dynasty, Matthew? Salindra dynasty. People would have come to the Borobudur. The empire was already aligned with a tradition, a syncretic tradition called the Shaiva Buddha. It was already merging Tantra from Buddhism and Shaivism. I want you to see it as an archetype. I don't want you to see it literally as a revival of a religion. It's an archetype of union. It's an archetype of reintegration after centuries of being lost, like king and queen coming together, not dismantling the patriarchy, but inviting the queen to lead again. They decide that what their ceremony is going to do. By the way, at the top of the Borobudur is a stupa. So at the top of the mandala, within the top is a stupa, and on top of the stupa is a spire of some sort. And at one time, that spire would have looked like an umbrella. It's called a chatra. And for centuries, that chatra has been missing or broken or incomplete. I want you to look at it through mythological eyes right now. I want you to look at the mythology. The central archetype symbol of the greatest mandala, which is the womb of integration, which is the birthplace of the new civilization. It is the crucible out of which the new civilization is birthed. It is the womb out of which the new deity emerges. Its central stupa, central spire, is broken. And that's how our civilization is. It's a reflection of our civilization. Broken, incomplete. And not only of our civilization, but you yourself. Do me a favor and look into your life. Do you feel complete? Do you feel whole? Do you feel connected? Do you feel hopeful? Do you feel in alignment? In a way that the stupa is a mirror for what's inside of us. And inside of us, it must feel like something is incomplete. As within, so without. As above, so below. These 2 cats sit in a dark room after 4 days of mixing their minds, sharing stories of visionary experience. A lot of these details I've left out, but Matthew's working on a documentary film that will absolutely blow your mind. It will blow your mind, not the least of which because of the impression that it leaves, but in which it was so incredibly artistically put together. They decide what they're going to do. The purpose of their ceremony is to not find the brick and mortar to make the chakra complete, but to use energy, vibration, intention, and visionary experience to imagine the completion of the chakra and to invite all of the pilgrims into that visionary, intentional experience of seeing completion already, not waiting for a yonder year where they will find the missing chakra, unearth it, and super glue it back together again, but to meditate deeply and to see that chakra is already complete through energy, use our vibration to reconstruct the final spire and on top of the Borobudur monument. And then by extension, and this is why I'm spending so much time on it, by extension, not only the 30 people that got to participate in that ceremony, which happened 3 days later on cue and exactly scripted, but now all of you. And whoever joins this class live or in the future, whoever reads Return with the Elixir, whoever discusses this with you, there was an incredible ceremony following the Bodhisattva vow to align our intentions with altruism. Then we meditated there to envision the completion of the spire, and then by extension to envision something more important, which is inside each of us. Inside each of us, wherever there's a dragon, there is also a treasure. The Buddha nature means that you are always complete. You are never broken. You are never separated. You are never deficient. You are never worthless. Underneath all of the pain, the agony, and the mythology of whatever trauma you've experienced that you've been indoctrinated to and conditioned towards seeing yourself through, there's a deeper message, there's a deeper vibration, there's a deeper hope, which is indestructible like a diamond. And it's our job to tap it. It's our job to tap it and mine it and become it, a Vajra body, a Vajra mind. And not to be distracted by the siren songs of consumerism and commercialism and distraction and fear and paranoia and division and divisiveness and collapse and destruction, but to tap the indestructible part of our being, of our humanity, of our human nature. This is why I'm spending so much time on it, because this is what it means to live mythology, to find better stories, to follow the synchronicities, to follow the signs. Shortly after we did the Borobudur mandala, we brought Geshe Tenzin Zopa to Bali. We brought him to the oldest still standing stupa here in Bali. And he did it again. He did a consecration to reactivate the stupa, the only last stupa in Bali. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm putting this together. I see just like when you look up above the pyramids, you see that the pyramids, the three main pyramids of Giza, they align. You know, this is the work of Graham Hancock and his colleagues, Robert Bauval. They recognize that those structures were based on hermetic alignments, that they weren't pharaohs' tombs. They were antenna, mathematically aligned with Orion's belt. 3 pyramids, 3 stars in Orion's belt, perfectly aligned, right down to the exact mathematics. There's something above calling us into communion with the planetary alignments. And I see the same thing happening because there are now 3 stupas. The stupa at Borobudur, which reminds us of our diamond nature. The stupa in Bali, which is the reminder of our rehabilitation. We can be revived. We can be switched back on. These time machines that are in the desert, like Göbekli Tepe, and the ones that they're unearthing in the Amazon, where civilizations of the past knew their place in the cosmic dance, and they knew they were spiritual beings on a long 25,000-year planetary cycle heading towards expansion of consciousness. They knew who they were. They weren't confused about who they were. They weren't temporal beings stuck in bodies with one life to live. So gobble up the planet. They weren't that. The third stupa is the one that's being built at the Ratcha Nunnery in the Sugam Valley. Now that one, what it symbolizes is the future. Lama Zopa's wish was that would face Tibet and be a beacon of hope for the next 1,000 years. I see that there is a continuum, a continuity, a stream. It stretches from the Sailendra dynasty 1,000 years ago, being reactivated, and it's connecting to 1,000 years from now. And all of them are stupas. When I ask Geshe Tenzin Zopa, what's the meaning, the purpose of the stupa? What is the symbol of the stupa? The symbol of the stupa technically is of enlightenment. More importantly, it's the realization of emptiness. What is the realization of emptiness? Is to always know that there's an infinite horizon of possibilities and to align with virtue. If you understand that your nature is open, that the infinite horizon of possibilities means that anything is possible. Anything is possible. Align with virtue and anything is possible. When you're facing the dragon, what better message? What better symbol than to remember you're an infinite being. Your nature is diamond, unbreakable. Because of the nature of open nature of reality, anything is possible. Align yourself with virtue and miracles can happen. When we look out at the devastation, there is the fire-breathing dragon. Remember your diamond nature. I'm saying this with conviction now. After the show, after the session, the doubt will creep back in. And I'll rely on Matthew and Amita and Doreen and all of you. I want you to remind me. I want you to be there for me. Remind me be a mirror of my diamond-like nature so that I can find the channel of hope that's deep within us, that's well established. It's ancient and long. And it's louder, actually, than all the siren songs of fear that are coming through every channel conceivable in our modern matrix. Remind me of the deeper truth and remind me of this mythology, that my life has purpose, that I'm meant to be here in this time, that I'm meant to hold hope for future generations, that I'm meant to participate in some constructive effort of a mandala that will protect, that will be equitable, that will be harmonious with the Trihita Karana. Help remind me. Let me show you a few pictures. There's screen. There. What do you see there, guys, without even knowing who they are? Any words? Kids. Is that what he said? Oh, nice. Anybody else? That's what I see. Love. That's love. Yes. Well, that's perfectly put. Another archetype that emerged, and I mentioned it last week, was this slogan that comes from the same time as the Sailendra, which is diversity within unity. Something holds us all together even though we have our distinctions. Look at that. There is Shiva Buddha. This is making mythology personal. This is making mythology alive. And this is what This is the next step. Once you find your mythology, you have to enact your mythology. You have to live according to your mythology. You have to become the symbol. The universal symbol has to be made personal. The archetype has to be lived. This is what Shiva Buddha looks like. This is them combining their energies. So this is them tapping the source. See, it's one stream that comes out in many voices. There's only one song, but it comes out of our apparatus in different dialects and different vibrations. This is the deeper one. This is the pilgrimage. You're on a pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is a sacred journey. It's through the labyrinth. It's through the maze. In this case, on the Borobudur, it's through those 9 levels, those stairways. Wherever you are on your journey, whether you're at the beginning or the middle or near the end, or you've cycled back, it's infinite. The alpha becomes the omega. You sail from Troy back to Ithaca after 10 years to be reunited with your son and daughter, to reclaim your throne as King Ulysses did, as Odysseus did. It's not long before you have to set sail again. Here's the Bodhisattva vow, and there you can see the chatra clearly, right? You can see there the spire, incomplete spire. I'm showing you these pictures. I hope that you don't have envy. I want you to know that this is happening right now. We haven't left the summit of the Borobudur. This wasn't meant for 30 people. This was meant for all of you. When you close your eyes, you can imagine yourself right there. You can tap the same vibration. And 100 years from now, they'll tap it, and 1,000 years, they'll be tapping the same vibration. This is the one in Bali that Geshe Tenzin Zopa so kindly reactivated. And reactivation, I mean, look, this is what's happening around the planet, is things are being uncovered. Things are being dusted off. Things are being reclaimed. Yes, the ugliness is also being revealed, but the sweetness is also, the ancient sciences are being revealed. The energetic body is being revealed. Our connection with spirit is being dusted off and rehabilitated. This is the Ratchen Nunnery home of Geshe Tenzin Zopa. Many of you have already participated in building some of this out and helping to make the lives of monks and nuns there more comfortable. This is the stupa at Kathmandu called the Bodhana Stupa. This is the one that Lama Zopa Rinpoche said something on the order of this magnitude should be built to last 1,000 years. Remember, a stupa is emptiness, and emptiness means openness, and openness means possibility, and possibility means hope. So if you want to take notes for tonight, what a stupa means is not brick and mortar of some Buddhist tradition. It is a beacon of possibility, which means hope. And guess what? We need a lot of it right now. Maybe one day, certainly one day, this is what we can do together. Now, if you don't work on this, I'm bringing this up because this is a project I feel committed to. I feel committed to for my children and for next generations. This is a way that I'm going to keep myself aligned and on task. You may feel called to participate in some way. I'll find a way for you to participate if you want to intersect. But find your project. I know that people here in Bali are thinking about renewables and regeneration and new sustainable this and sustainable that. That might be your project. You are healing something inside of you and you are rebuilding something for others. Does that make sense? in a way, you're healing something within inside of you so that you can be more available to the constructive effort of being part of a legacy that will actually pay dividends forward for thousands of years. And this is where the individual and the collective meet. So this is the coming together of the past and the future, of the masculine and the feminine, of the left brain and the right brain, of Shiva and Buddha, of love and liberation.